All right, so for our next session, we are going to be talking about delivering agile and resilient cross-functional automation at scale with modern low-code, no-code. And we have here joined with us Jesse Shiah. He's the co-founder and chief executive officer at AgilePoint. So since 2003, Mr. Shia has been a pioneer in low-code, no-code innovation. He founded AgilePoint in Silicon Valley to deliver disruptive digital advantages through the integration of process and modern composable model-driven technologies that require no coding. Jesse has also worked with organizations ranging from startups to Fortune 100s to accelerate the digital process automation, innovation, and citizen development success. He has also presented at numerous high-tech conferences where he continues to evangelize that vision. So, Jesse, if you're ready, I'll hand it over to you and you can take it from there.
Thank you so much. Come on. And firstly, I just want to thank the opportunity to spend the next half an hour with every one of you to share our perspectives on the future of intelligent workflow automation. So for today, I'm actually going to be focusing on one area that we have heard from many enterprise executives who have told us this is the areas of automation that remain to be one of the biggest challenge for their digital transformation. And I'm going to talk about that in combination of a couple very hot trends that's happening in the market today. We talk about local, no-code, and also citizen development. So let's get started. So firstly, at the end of today's session, we'd like you to be able to, a couple learning objectives, right? You'll be able to learn the difference between what's a modern local no-code versus a legacy local no-code. And secondly, is how to leverage a modern local no-code platforms that can also in combination with process, and then leverage the citizen development trend to really enable organization to automate cross-functional processes much faster. And the third is to learn why not just any local no-code, but a modern local no-code platforms that are really essential. If we want to be able to ensure that the citizen development can be successful and scalable and sustainable in an organization, a modern local no-code is a must. So firstly, let's talk about automation at scale. Even we are, as I say that today, I'm going to focus on the cross-functional automation because that's an area that we have heard from all the enterprise executives say that's an area that they need the most for their digital transformation. It means that a lot of organizations have done a lot of automation, right? For example, from the functional specific workflow automation, and many have adopted RPA to automate the task automation. And so from the task automation, the process automation is really about how do we bring the automation together. But more importantly is, doesn't matter what automation we create, how the automation can continue to stay as agile and resilient, because more and more the business conditions are becoming a lot more dynamic. So we talk about automation, and this is not something new. I mean, you have heard of the leading analysts such as Gordon and Forrester have been talking about automation as a key pillar to digital transformation. And really in this case here, right, the focus here is really about we should automate anything possible, right, and take automation to widespread in the organization. And so because of that, a lot of organization has really focused on the investment of automation technology. And today, in a lot of task automation, such as adopting RPA for the task automation, and also the workflow automation, but it happens in a lot of functional specific areas. But that was really attributed to a lot of organizations still running very silo. And this kind of silo automation really does not lead to a true digital transformation. As Gardner has defined, say, this type of automation will really lead you to digital optimization. And that's really why there are so many sources have reported a lot of organizations have started a digital transformation initiative as early as 10 years ago, but more than 70% has reported failed, right? And what is the reason for that? And then I think that's really where that we can spend some time. And that's also why, as I mentioned, that a lot of enterprise executives are telling us they have identified the cross-functional automation is still the missing link. And as a matter of fact, this is actually McKinsey has talked about digital transformation is not about just getting some automation done and getting some efficiency gain, cutting down FTE hours. It really needs a new operating model. And this new operating model needs to be supported by cross-functional automation at scale. And in a way, it's really about cut across silos, right? We need automation collaboration to cut across silos. And that is still one of the biggest challenge. So if you take a look at that, kind of summarize that, what we're saying is we need a lot of this type of cross-functional automation and orchestrations across silos. And here's just a few examples. Right? And so basically what we are saying is we need to be able to do this type of cross-functional automation and orchestration. And really, they are really some of the most core, most important, regulated, sensitive, business critical processes, but they yet the most broken. When we say the broken is a lot of them remain as a menu, so they're very slow and very error prone. And until we are able to tackle this at scale, we are not be able to really get to digital transformation according to McKinsey. So now let's take a look at the actual example. Remember I say that we heard that from a lot of enterprise executives, right? Here's actually one executive from a Fortune 100. And when we go through that, maybe you can, if you're also an executive of enterprise, maybe you can ask yourself, is that you as well, right? So in the case, they say many of their digital transformation initiatives are held back because they lack of developers' talent. Basically, they do not have enough developers resources. And this is a typical IT stack we have heard, right? Of course, there are still many others, but it's, ERP, like CRM, like Salesforce, and all the way to Microsoft Office 365, Power BI, Azure, or AWS, or some of them still have mainframes, right? ServiceNow, very typical, right? And they also have some workflow of BPM and RPA. But then what we're hearing is they all say that they lack a budget to hire needed professional software development resources, means that they need a lot more software developers, but they cannot get enough to be able to work on those initiatives. So the goal, right, is very interestingly, right, whenever we heard this title come to the top, they always say they need to create a lot more cross-functional applications that cut across organizations or maybe across business units, but they need to be able to sit on top of their existing IT stacks. Really, they have to alleviate the silos. Okay, and really sometimes you think about some of this is the largest enterprise, they are still suffer the same silo challenges. And some of them even say, foreseeing the coming recessions, they really want to be able to start establishing this kind of capability internally to be able to create this cross-functional automation applications. Instead of relying on a consultant or contractors, have a team of people that's staying in their company, right? And I think this is not about just having a consultant or contractor do that. It's really about organizationally looking for organizational agility. They want their people to be able to actually do that and get more hands-on. And then we also heard the aspiration. So they say they really are looking, right, to see if they are able to leverage a broader talent pool that can participate in their digital transformation initiatives. And some of them say, we have heard of the term citizen development, but we have never heard of that can be deployed to build cross-functional enterprise applications. And I hope this is where we, through after today's presentation, we will start to be able to paint a picture that you can see a path forward to address these challenges. So firstly, let's take a look at why so many organizations needing this cross-functional automation. How do we get to where we are today? Again, what most of the traditionally until today, I mean, most organizations have relied on the centralized IT to serve all the different business functional areas of different business units. But IT is really being burdened, right, with a lot of different tasks, right, from infrastructure, right, from managing all the major line of business systems, right, from ERP, for example, could be SAP, Oracle, to CRM, could be Salesforce, and many others. And then, so they really have the bandwidth to really work on the major back office, the core applications. So this picture here kind of shows the trunks, right? It's more like the main core applications. But when the focus has to be on major line of business systems, it sometimes, it actually naturally promotes the silo, because a lot of applications are being done here versus being done here. And at the same time, business needs a lot more, as we say, cross-functional automation, front office improvements, or improving the experience of customer journeys. And all of this really just go into the IT backlog. So what we are saying here is opportunity, right? So basically what we say is when we switch into digital transformation, become a digital business, we really need to build a lot of those cross-functional automations and improving the customer journey experience. And those are all of this additional application to fill the gaps. And as we talk about here, from here to here, this cross-functional. And this is really where a lot of business subject matter experts, right, if they can become project system development. And this is really where a really strategic and perfect partnership opportunity between IT and the system developers who could be the current business subject matter experts. So if we take a look at this cross-functional automation in like a logical architectural view, right? So this is really what we want to build, where a lot of organizations already build a lot of these task automations and things. But in the way, as we say that, from that example we heard from that executive, they say we want to be able to sit on top of our existing IT stack. And this is a very example of a very popular, right, this IT stacks. And the thing here is when we actually gonna try to use this older stack to support this type of cross-functional automation, why it's so important, why executive cares so much about them, is because the economic impact of this kind of cross-functional could be a lot greater, right? Many times can be up to 5 times, 10 times, or even greater than the regular functional specific task automation. But when we actually looking to be able to develop these applications, and because this levels of return, right? So it's really, that's why a lot of established BPM platforms has been able to charge for millions of dollars, right? Incur tens of millions of TCO to create that. If you click on the link, you'll be able to see that this is a report published by bpm.com and kind of shows some of those TCO of those kind of deployments. And if we look at how we create those applications, but in a traditional way, where we take the requirement, we hand it over to the IT, and then IT turns that into code-based development and actually eventually lead to a technical debt. And this, when we do it this way, and this actually complicates the whole thing, especially when the cross-functional automation is super complex sometimes, and they will take a lot more effort, a lot more development, a lot more coding, and you really dramatically increase the complexity. It also increase the technical debt. And that's also why a lot of organizations are really lacking this cross-functional automations. So how can we simplify that? So when we work with a lot of our customers and a lot of enterprise, they actually explain to us, right? This is actually one of the customers say, what we've really been looking for is a chief complexity reduction officer, right? Because we want to be able to deliver agility, resilience, not just about creating one application faster, is to do that at the organizational level. It takes a whole system to be able to enable that. And this is really where I think it's interesting for us to start talking about a modern local no-code. And so in a way, so in the, how we can actually make that, simplify that. In a way, firstly, right, we want to loosely couple now from the infrastructure, so that the application development doesn't tie directly in code into those systems. So how do we do that? Through IT asset abstraction framework, we can abstract the business capabilities, and then that enables a visual composition, okay, to create different applications. Could be automation, could be form, could be mobile, portal, integration, analytics, for example. But more importantly is that this application being created will never become technical debt. Why? Because you never go through a code generation. And then there's a new generation of dynamic execution engines be able to read the descriptions and execute directly. And this is key. This will dramatically, not only it simplifies the complexity, it reduces the technical debt. So in a way, if we summarize, right, more like what would be the future state would like to look like, is really about, with this kind of capability, we'll be able to empower enterprise system development, make this sustainable, to enable business to be able to lead a lot of this innovation because they know the requirement themselves, right? They are able to actually work on it. So this is what we talk about system developers. But IT can still have a very important role, right? Because IT will have to make sure that all of this will happen under strong governance. And IT can continue to extend all this abstracted business capability to further empower, right? So this is really where that we talked about, especially for cross-functional automation. As we mentioned, that a business subject matter expert turned system developer would be the perfect candidates because they know the requirements and they can actually enable them to do it directly. So now I know that some of you will now may ask a question, say, wait, I mean, that complexity, but I thought isn't local no code the answer? All right. So now let's take a look now. Okay, so a lot of people are thinking about the local no code is gonna take your technical debt away, right? It's come to the rescue. And in fact, right, if you take a look at how the low code interest, right, this is actually Google Trends. If you see how the search of the low code interest has evolved, you see there was a spike in about 2003, 2004. That was right after the dot-com crash. And some people was asking about, we really need more agility, right? So there was some interest there. But really, that did not sustain, right? That did not continue. And then not until a lot of organizations started looking to do digital transformation, right, from cloud computing and the social and the big data, right? But a lot of them reported their initiative failed, right? And that's when Gordon Forrester started talking about low-code in around 2016. And that's when a lot of organizations, right, I mean, vendors started trying to provide this offering now. But when you start to try to do something at this time, there's really no time for you to really innovate. So most of them have just adopted the same code generation techniques, right? And of course, and that's when the system development interest of that also started. But AgilePoint, right, we started out this innovation in 2003, and we have continued throughout all this time doing that. And that's why we would love to introduce to you what we consider to be a modern local no-code, not a code generation based local no-code, because they will still lead to the same challenges. So the other thing we also want to think about today, when the organization think about adopting system development using the local no-code technologies, and what we're seeing is there are really two different camps. There's a camp of local technology were built for professional developers to enable them to do the coding development faster by generating code, and that would lead to technical debt. There's a lot of no-code tools they were built to deal with one specific task or specific use case, and to make it with no code. Inherently, they still do code generation, and this really lead to, because they were so much specific purpose tools, it really leads to makes the silo challenge even worse. We have heard this from a lot of organizations. But the other thing is, if we want the system development to be sustainable, if you have a local no-code, like portion developers and system developers using different type of tools, you will never be able to get there. So this divide, right, is really hinders the partnership and also the governance. So in a way, as we talk about a modern local no-code, is really to not only simplify the complexity. Firstly, we simplify the complexity by not involving code generation. Okay, it's a model-based technology from design to execution directly. And then when you come back to do iterative improvement, still a model. So it dramatically reduces the technical debt, unlike the traditional code generation-based low-code, no-code. And then the other thing is that to enable system development can be sustainable in an organization, we must enable IT and the system developer to work together on the same platform. So we can talk about how the 15 years of innovation, right, enable us to really to architect from the scratch, right, in architecture that's a layer and unified. So you have a layer for portion developers, you have a layer for system developers, and so through layer, and also this layer of a low code can abstract from whatever the existing IT stack you have into the business capabilities to empower the system developers. And by doing this way, anything being built here can be governed. Okay, and so this is really important as we talk about that, to really enable, right, IT and system developer can work together on the same platform instead of on separate platforms. And so in the more detail, right, in the more details, and again, the existing IT stack or your custom development can all go through this local layer and then be able to turn into, at this level, a lot of compositional business capabilities. And the key here is this will enable you to create use case agnostic applications, right? Doesn't matter, it's automation and a lot of different, different task automation, workflow automation, cross-functional automations. And so this is very important so that you don't get into that no-code sprawl, right? That further worsening the silos challenges. And the other thing is this is actually totally extensible. So IT can continue to extend this. As a matter of fact, you can even go back to take your past coding and be able to dig out the different code snippets. And through this abstraction framework, you can actually turn them into now a new no-code activity for your organization. So kind of summarize that, right? So through this, so with out of a box, we already created close to 1,000 of this no-code activities, and that's actually abstracted from more than 100 systems. Okay, all the different very sophisticated process patterns, and then also the form for the presentation. And just by this 100 systems, it probably will cover most of the IT stack you already have, so that you are able to right away lay this on top of your IT stack now and start creating this future-proofing cross-functional automations. But when we don't generate code, there's also another very important capability is that, so when the business conditions becoming more dynamic, many times this execution, without go back to regenerating code, without go back to the engineering cycle or redesign cycle again, it can adapt to the changes at runtime dynamically. And so again, with this platform, use case agnostic, very important, right? From process to task automation to mobile, this is all covered. As we mentioned that, one thing that you cannot make system development successful in the organization without talking about governance, right? So the 15 years of focusing on this innovation has enabled us to really create an enterprise-grade governance and security framework that's layered, so that you are able to, through different permutation of different permissions and different layers, that's how you are able to cover hundreds of thousands of different use cases. So now at this time, now let's take a look at a couple customer case studies and findings. So firstly, here is a global company. As you can see right away, it's got 50 global subsidiaries. So we are talking about not just cross-functional inside one company. We're actually talking about cross business units, cross subsidiaries. Okay, that's taking it to an even higher, more challenging level. And when we get to this kind of cross business unit, cross subsidiaries, is also very applicable to your M&A, merger acquisition scenarios, right? So here's an example that a purchase order, right? That's that's in one organization, cross-functional, and this is how they were able to use this. What we talk about this architectural modern local process totally simplify the complexity, right? They were able to create more than hundreds of this kind of cross-functional applications. And this is one example of the kind of typical benefit you will expect, but the difference is now you are able to create a cross-functional at scale. And then to take it to the next level, that cross-functional is actually cross-business units, the different subsidiaries. And here's another example, right? It's like a Fortune 100. Right? They have created more than 8,000 different, automations over the last 15 years. As you can imagine, on multiple different platforms, many of them has become legacy now. As part of digital transformation, they say they need to recreate them. So in this case here, this modern local architecture, because it doesn't generate into code, it gives you a couple very strategic benefits. Number one, so you notice that when they actually replaced the 8,000, they didn't have to create 8,000. They only created 2,000. Right, because it's not code generation. It's actually a dynamic model. So each model can actually address multiple different variations without having to create different version of coding. Right, so right away you simplify, you rationalize your application portfolio. Not only accomplish transformation. How many times you hear people say you accomplish a digital transformation by reducing applications? Right, and that's really where this is a new paradigm. Right, makes it possible. The other thing is we actually later on learned this customer, really did not, after training, they really did not engage with professional services with us. We were very intrigued how they build it. Later on, we learned that, right? Gary was actually one of the users working in their procurement for almost 20 years. And he was assigned to actually rebuild all the procurement applications. And learning AgilePoint by himself, no training, and then he actually built that. He said he built about 25 of those procurement applications. It was very interesting. Later on, when he said he was looking for another procurement job, he could not find one easily, and he wanted to put AgilePoint experience on his resume. He got hired the second day. Just very, very exciting, interesting story to hear. Right, here's another, we talk about merge acquisition. Here's another, two Fortune 100 merge, and they say, hey, we have to merge. We cannot legally merge. We have to operationally integrate it because we cannot slow down our digital transformation. So they already have very, leading, right, established BPM solutions in both companies, but eventually chose AgilePoint because they need to create that cross-functional automation at scale very quickly, right, to be able to achieve that operationally integrated benefits objective, but not slowing down the digital transformation. And many of them also did they have that traditional BPM, and they actually, because they couldn't break through the productivity layer, they brought RPA in, but they started finding the challenges with RPA, and eventually they went to have AgilePoint together with RPA, have the hybrid solution, and really get the best of both technology to deliver that intelligent automation. But most important is sustainable, robust, scalable, end-to-end cross-functional automation. So now let's just summarize in a few key takeaways. So firstly, as we learned, right, McKinsey have identified a lot of companies, especially after the pandemic, they have invested a lot of technology, but they typically focus on here. We heard some enterprise told us, right, they say their enterprise automation strategy is RPA, which is very mind-boggling. But however, I think more and more now are finding that RPA does a great job, right? Cut down FT hours. It's really about task automation. But that end-to-end cross-functional is really the key, as McKinsey has identified. And we need to be able to do that at scale with that simplified architecture, simplified approach that does not, when we create more, it doesn't create a burden in technical depth. Secondly, right, modern local no-code is not just a better local no-code, it's a totally new paradigm, right? The legacy local no-code, the leveraging the same code generation from the past 25, 30 years. Because again, as I say, when traditionally most companies, they will not try to create a product that IT may think, right, hey, this is not what we're looking for, right? So when it started trying to do that, respond to what Forrest and Gordon was saying, there's just not enough time to innovate, right? And we've been doing that since 2003. And the other thing, right? Local doesn't mean that IT doesn't have doesn't have a role in it. As we say that it really needs to be a platform for both IT and system developer to work together. And IT plays a very strategic role, right, to govern and also continue to expand the platform. And third, we just talk about this, right? So again, a lot of organizations say the RPA is their automation strategy, and now they are thinking about how do they handle the cross-functional in a robust, scalable, sustainable way, right? This is what we have seen a lot of our enterprise customers have actually evolved. Finally, right, I don't know how many of you have known that Project Management Institute have defined the system development certification program, and to really to provide education, right, to help organization to be able to upskill and reskill a lot of their existing non-IT, non-technical staff to become system developers. As remember, I say that the business subject matter expert are the perfect candidate, right? Business analysts, project managers are perfect candidates to actually become system developers. And AgilePoint has achieved to be a gold partner of PMI, and we are working together to enable in the enterprise system development. So finally, I'm just gonna quickly also that PMI has a lot of this webinar series, right? There's one coming up on October 19th. Our customers, GCSD, is actually gonna be later talking about, be a panelist, talk about their experience, how they use AgilePoint with their system development experience. So if you have time, definitely recommend you to join and listen, right? This is a link, or you can just go to register. So again, quickly about us, we've started in 2003 with this innovation. Today we have more than 1,000 customers globally, and very evenly spread out because we work with a lot of global enterprise. And our customers are coming from more than 11 different vertical industries, because this challenge we're talking about is not industry specific. It's really across industries. AgilePoint is globally, have a footprint globally to support our global customers. And so we really are the one that to really bring that first layer local platform together that does process and application to enable system development from the enterprise. So I hope you find this session informative, and I learned a lot from everybody like you when we get a chance to share our perspective. So I definitely look forward to connecting with you, and so that we get to share our perspective and we can all learn together. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Jesse. We just picked a few questions up for you, if you don't mind answering them, though.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, so the first one is if AgilePoint enables migration from an existing automation framework, and if yes, what could be an estimated time that you assume to layer AgilePoint solutions?
Absolutely. Let me see if I can go back to, for example, right? I mean, all of these examples we are talking about here, they're all involving migration from other platforms, right? So in this case here, for example, right, this 8,000 application was built in multiple different platforms. So in a way, right, and as I mentioned here, right, so in a way, they actually, imagine this, right, 8,000 applications. If you're going to rebuild them, they took them 15 years. You say, I'm going to take you 15 years to rebuild them. Nobody would do it, right? Even you have to do it. You just have, because the market will change now. Even 10 years is too long. 5 years is just still too long, right? So how can you really simplify that? So in a way, right, and I think this is really very interesting. We actually work with one customer, like in a customer side this, right? Almost every customers, when they adopt AgilePoint, is replace another one. More than 75% of our customers actually to replace an existing platform. And so every time they ask us, they say, what will be the effort, right? And they say with other vendors, they will need to know all the details. What's the existing application? What does it look like? All the requirements. For us, we only give them a simple spreadsheet table. We say, tell us in your existing process right now, how many of them are manual activity? How many of them assistant activity. We just have those couple information, and we are we feel comfortable to be able to provide an estimated effort, just because the architectural innovation give us that levels of simplicity.
Right.
I hope that answers your question. But if you did not, right, feel free to reach out to me.
Yes, absolutely. We are open with the discussions poll as well. And yeah, so in terms of another question that have popped up, so for the organizations that are growing and scaling, what according to you would be an ideal time to adapt an agile automation system?
Okay. As a matter of fact, right? As a matter of fact, we actually work with customers, and we always tell them, right? We always tell them that. So, firstly, there's no it's good time or a bad time to do that. It's the sooner you started doing it, right? However, the thing is, if I want to start doing it, how can I do it in a non-intrusive way? Right. So that's what, again, right? Remember that example I said, that executive was saying that they need to be able to create cross-functional, but they need to be able to sit on top of the IT stack,
IT
right?
guys, yeah.
And so how can you sit on top, but without disrupting them, but you are able to abstract, right? So you started abstracting into those general, abstracted business capability and started building, because when you started doing this, then your application now is becoming, it's not directly tied to the underlying system by coding, right? And so this become your future-proof representation of your operations and your asset. So what that means is, even you decided to switch from one system to another,
right,
it will not impact here. You just need to switch. You just need to come, like I say, some of this visual composition, you just switch into a different one, right? So, and that's really enable, that's really, so in a way, right, the earlier you do that, right, the earlier you do that, you'll be moving on to enable that this asset you created become future proving, and not depending on when this, when your ERP has an update now, has an upgrade, or you have to like disrupting your running application directly.
Right. Thus also reducing the complexities going further on as well.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. And lastly, though, the question is, what are the deployment options in terms of AgilePoint's, solutions?
Very good question. Very good question. So as we are talking about, as you can see here, right, our customer would deploy 2,000, creating 2,000 applications, all the mission critical applications, and cross-functional tend to be very mission critical, right? The most business critical. So even a lot of company adopting technology, solutions as a SaaS, right? We also provide AgilePoint as a SaaS, but AgilePoint let our customer also be able to deploy this on premises or on your own private cloud. So you can have AgilePoint sitting inside your own network, right? Subject by your own security framework, and then be able to actually do the cross-functional, adapting, connecting, across all of your infrastructures or your business units.
All right. So it's the private cloud, and does it also include on-premises deployment as well?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, that you could be still on your own data center, on premises, or you could be on AWS, on Azure, or other clouds.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Jesse. So Jesse Shiah here, who's the co-founder and CEO of AgilePoint. Thank you so much. And he'll be happy to answer other questions as well, available on the VIP section, or you can reach out to the team at agilepoint.com as well. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity today.
All right. So now we're going to go ahead and take our first networking break, and see you later on.